Let's talk about Kylie Captain, a proud Gamilaroi woman raised in the inner city suburbs of Redfern and Waterloo, whose work has not only impacted the lives of many across Australia, but has also touched readers worldwide. As the author of Dream Big and Imagine the What If, as well as the co-author of Be That Teacher Who Makes a Difference, Kylie is on a mission to make that difference. In fact, she's due to release her third book, Create the Life of Your Dreams in Your Teens, in December. Kylie is the founding director of Dream Big Education, Wellbeing and Consulting and holds the position of president at the Aboriginal Studies Association. Kylie also serves as a board director over the past 2 decades, has had an impressive career in Aboriginal education, finance and community services. Would you please welcome to the State Library of New South Wales, Kylie Captain.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for that very warm introduction. I always get a tad little teary when I hear people reading my bio, but it does settle within a moment or two. I'm really honoured to be here today. As mentioned, my name is Kylie Captain. I'm a proud Gamilaroi woman. My mum is from Walgett, a small country town in northwest New South Wales, and I was born and raised on Gadigal country, just down the road in Crown Street Women's Hospital, where I grew up in the inner city suburbs of Redfern and Waterloo. Before I begin today, I'd like to start by acknowledging country, acknowledge that I'm very much a visitor to this beautiful country, and I just want to extend that gratitude to the ancestors and the custodians of this country for allowing us all to be here, to gather, to connect, to hear stories, to celebrate the achievements and all the authors who are here sharing their stories, motivating, inspiring everyone. My very first book that I wrote, and I published it at the end of 2021, it's called Dream Big and Imagine the What If, and the first chapter in that book is called We All Have a Story. So I acknowledge everyone's stories, I acknowledge your stories, and I truly am honoured to share a little bit of my story, my passion, my why with each and every one of you today. Wherever I go, I always acknowledge the 3 incredible Aboriginal women who raised me. They've all passed away now. My birth mum, Millie, she passed when I was just 3 years old. And my mum who raised me, my mum had 1 sister, and a big part of our Aboriginal communities is kinship. So my mum, Denise, then stepped in and she raised me as her own. So I was raised by her and my beautiful grandmother, who was in my life until I was 16. As well as the stories of injustice, tragedy, sadness of these women growing up in Australia, which was often a very hard, racist. They did it tough growing up in Walgett. But one thing that I have inherited, as well as the sad stories, is that intergenerational resilience as a very proud Aboriginal woman. The why. As mentioned, I'm a published author of 2 books. I'm currently writing that 3rd book. It's a really beautiful story, that 3rd book, and one that I'm excited to share, which I'll touch on a little bit later, but it's actually co-written with my son. He's 23 and he came into my life when I was just 19, and I have a beautiful 19-year-old daughter as well. So I've been a mum and an auntie and a community kind of helper ever since I was a little girl. But I'm going to start by talking about obviously, we're here at the State Library of New South Wales. Can I thank the library for bringing us together and thank Jane and all of the organisers for this opportunity today. I always thought to myself that I wanted to be an author. I guess a little bit of my story is just a story, and it's one that, I guess I have experienced tragedy, sadness, grief, and one thing that I have learnt throughout my journey is resilience and being strong and bouncing back from those adversities. I guess I grew up in Waterloo. My family, both my mums were born and raised on the banks of the Namai River, and like many Aboriginal families, moved down to Redfern. Some came chasing work, others came for health reasons. For my mum, it was to be closer to St Vincent's Hospital. She was a patient of Dr. Victor Chang. Sadly, she passed at just 28 when I was 3. So I guess grief and that sadness, understanding that sadness was a big part of my story from when I was a little girl. I grew up in a community that struggled. I lived in Housing Commission. We did it really tough. I went to Redfern Public School. I was a child who missed a lot of school due to chronic health conditions. I spent a lot of my childhood in hospital due to suffering from chronic psoriasis. I would spend months in hospital. So obviously there were lots of gaps in my learning. And whenever I'd go back to school, I was always that kid that was always behind. And sometimes I'd just do some colouring in or some dot the dots, and, you know, I'd often be absent again. And sometimes we'd travel to Walgett where we'd spend months as well. And kids could be cruel. You know, people would be unkind to me because of my appearance. I had, specialists from all around the world coming into Sydney to see my psoriasis because it was so bad. So obviously my self-esteem was quite low. I got caught up in a vicious cycle of pain, suffering, learning ways to numb what I was experiencing. And sadly, some of those ways weren't healthy ways. And in my teens, I found myself suffering with addiction, going nowhere, not really having any aspirations in life, and holding on for dear life, fast forwarding to my teenage years, trying to get through year 10. I had one older sister that made it to the end of year 10, and I thought, sadly, she passed away as well when she was just 30, but I thought, well, if Narelle could do it, then so can I. I'm going to try my best to get there. But at this stage, I was going to school 2 to 3 days a week, not going anywhere. But I had a teacher who believed in me. All the office ladies would kind of get, a bit growly at me, and you're here late again, Kylie. I was going only maybe 2 days, often under the influence, not going, getting myself into all sorts of trouble. But that beautiful quote, it says that they'll always remember how they made you feel. And Dr. Kathy Burgess, who I went on to co-write my second book with, she was there, and I remember this moment like it was yesterday. And I remember walking into those school gates, and there she was, normally rushing around as teachers do from class to class with their books and their papers, but she'd pause and she'd stop and say, Kylie, I'm so happy to see you. I can't wait to see you in your Aboriginal Studies class the following year. And I would do the typical teenage eye roll, when's this woman ever going to shut up, and all these sorts of things. And she said it a few times, and until I thought to myself, what if? What if she was right? For the first time, she told me that I was smart, that I was deadly, which is my, it means awesome, smart, amazing. And I thought, well, what if? And I decided to try my best to get to the end of year 10. A little miracle moment that my school also did was they sent me to my work experience at the Department of Aboriginal Affairs in the city. And my world changed forever because growing up, I didn't hear about people like me. I'm an author, I'm a teacher, I'm a business owner. I love to write, I love to read, I love to do all these things. I love being a passionate advocate for my culture. But I walked into the buildings after much support of my school. They knew that I didn't have any money to get there or any clothes. They gave me a $50 voucher and a Metro 10 pass to get from Redfern into the city. And I walked into that building. It was like a twilight moment for me. My world changed. There were people like Linda Burney, Gabriella. And I went home to my mum because I didn't know that Aboriginal people were successful in these fields. I always heard about the footy players, the athletes, the artists, and I was none of those. I was a kid crying in the toilet if we had to do PE. So I thought, what type of Aboriginal person am I? I'm not good at any of those things. But I walked into that building and I went home to my mum and said, Mum, there's deadly black fellas in the city dressed up real flash doing these jobs. And I went back and on day 3, having little mini panic attacks, very much out of my comfort zone heading in there. But I went back and on day 3 they called my school and said, she's amazing, can we have her for another week? Our receptionist has fallen ill, she's running this huge switchboard, she's doing all these jobs. And they were like, keep her, whatever you're doing, keep her. So I stayed there for 2 weeks. They wrote me a beautiful letter. I went back to school in Kathy Burgess' class. All the pennies started to drop for me when I studied her Aboriginal Studies class. I learnt about assimilation policies, protection policies. I learnt the history of this country. I could now understand why my mum was so cranky and why she never felt comfortable coming into my school. Mum said that she had to go and work for white families as a domestic servant from the age of 11 because she wasn't allowed to go to school anymore. This was just, a lot of people say, why don't they just get over it? It wasn't that long ago. This was my mum's experience. So I became fascinated. I can still remember how those books felt, how they looked, how they smelt, and I went on to achieve my HSC, being the first in my family. I also inherited my mum's, what they say is a life-threatening heart condition. I say my strong is the most powerful and strongest heart there is, but I have an internal cardiac defibrillator and I've had it for 18 years. And I remember first getting that and going to the coronary care ward and with all the old girls and Bub, are you in the right room? This isn't. I'm like, yes, Auntie, I'm here. I need one of those as well. And I'm extremely grateful for that. I'm a very grateful person. My first book covers a bit of everything. I always said that by the time I was 40, I wanted to write a book, because throughout my grief, throughout my health issues, all the sadness of losing, my mums, my nan, a best friend, even the father of my children when they were just little as well. People that know me describe me as someone that's resilient. And I thought, what does that word even mean? Anyway, I know what it means now. I thought if I only ever write one book, I'm going to pop it all in there. The first chapter is my story. It's a bit of a tearjerker. And then it turns into a chapter on grief. It's called Riding the Waves of Grief. I have a chapter on Aboriginal histories and cultures. Being the president of the Aboriginal Studies Association, I'm passionate about this. I went on to become a teacher and lead Aboriginal education in many schools across southwest Sydney and the state. I'm working with educators right across the country now to ensure that our curriculum is one full of truth-telling, and importantly, one where all of our Aboriginal children can feel valued, where everyone belongs. But it's not just about ensuring that our Aboriginal kids, know this stuff. It's everybody's business. So I'm all about, really hoping that we can change the education system, and that everyone can value Aboriginal education, whether we're Aboriginal or not Aboriginal. It's part of our shared history. And it's not just also learning about the sad stuff, it's learning about the rich and beautiful culture. So that's the work that I do now. It then turns into like a motivational book. It's like a self-help book towards the end. So I thought if I only ever write one book, it's all going in there. I went on to write this second book, which it's actually taking off right around the country and abroad. Sydney University has actually just made it mandatory for all pre-service teachers. I wrote this with Dr. Kathy Burgess, my teacher. We are both president and vice president of the Aboriginal Studies Association. I teach her a thing or two these days as well. She thinks it's fascinating for me, like creating QR codes for our courses and all this deadly technology stuff. So I'm like, yes. And we just work really beautifully together, and it's a lovely story being Aboriginal, being a non-Aboriginal educator. She's actually, for the last 40 years, made a big difference to education. She leads the Masters in Aboriginal Educational Leadership at Sydney University. So together, we're creating these amazing masterclasses that teachers and educators right across the country are loving. What if? I always ask myself, what if? And I have set myself some really big goals over the years. What if I could be the first to get my HSC? What if I could be the first to go to university? I studied at university whilst working full-time, whilst raising my 2 young kids, and I did it all. And I remember not feeling confident, and we all deserve a champion. We all need a champion. It was years later, I remember thinking, I don't know if I can do this. So I emailed my trusted old teacher from years ago, Miss Burgess. Hey, I didn't get to go straight to uni, after I finished school. I went through some other challenges, and I was pregnant at 18, had my son at 19, went on and actually worked for Aboriginal Affairs, which was a little bit of a miracle moment there, and worked for St George Bank for 6 years, but I always knew that I wanted to be a teacher. I wholeheartedly say that education changed my life. I live a life of freedom and choice because of what education's done for me. I'm living a life now that wasn't written for me. Growing up in Housing Commission, we did it really tough. I didn't have sometimes, and I'm never someone that likes to dwell on the sad things. I focus on the energy that I have now and the things that I have. But I've travelled around the world. I've been to places like Greece and Canada and the Bahamas. I took my kids to Disneyland a month after my son, the day after my son graduated from his HSC. We've been everywhere. I've built my dream house. I'm now a new business owner. What if is something that I continue to ask myself, and particularly with the young people that I work with, I always say, well, what if? What if you try, and what if things do work out? And I also say this to all the adults as well. So this is after working towards a career in education, studied, got my teaching degree. The email that I sent to Miss Burgess was, I'm now working full-time. I've got 2 young kids. I still want to become a teacher. Do you think I could do it? And she sent me back a one-liner that pretty much said, of course you can, you're smart. So I was like, oh, she says I can do it. So I've always, really had that growth mindset, and really try to inspire our young people to also believe in themselves. Becoming a mum changed my life from a really sad teenage years. I was getting involved in lots of horrible things, crime, drugs, not going anywhere. He was a miracle baby. This year he's 23. 23 is my favourite number. He was born on the 23rd July 2000. And I'm actually publishing a book with my son. He actually works in finance now, helping Aboriginal people build their wealth. My beautiful daughter has got a wonderful career working in universities, and I'm a very, very proud mum, and try to be a role model for my community, because they look up to me, and my nieces and nephews and others say, well, if Auntie Kai or Mum can do it, then so can I. I always wanted to use my adversities and my grief to make a difference, and I guess that's how I want to be remembered. And I ask myself that all the time, and I ask each and every one of you here as well, think about how you want to be remembered. I want to be remembered as someone who was brave, someone who was resilient, someone who never gave up. So after my career, I worked for St. George Bank for many years as well. Really quickly getting back to that yarn, I was helping so many people get home loans. I was promoted to a specialist position. I didn't know that Aboriginal people could actually buy their own home. I dreamt about maybe getting a housing commission place that might be a house with a yard instead of a block of units like I lived in Waterloo. But one thing that I dreamt of when I was working there was seeing myself on the other side of that counter and coming back one day and applying for a home loan. So I did that in 2009. I went back with my little kids as a single mum, and I bought my own house, and I've gone on to achieve many, many things that were kind of my big unachievable goals. This is my first year in business. I worked my way through education. I became a teacher. I taught in schools in southwest Sydney. I led an Aboriginal education team supporting the improvement journey of schools, supporting curriculum, working alongside principals, directors, teachers. And this what if, my role had changed. So it was the ideal job when I signed up for it. I would work with students, work with communities, work with educators. So I said this was the dream job. And then the role changed. So the community and the student side was no longer there. So I always listen deeply to my gut and think, well, what am I here, and I'm doing, what I need to be doing. So right before Christmas, I decided to step away, and this is my first year in business. So I created my own business, Dream Big Education, Wellbeing and Consultancy. And it was scary. I walked away from a really good job, but I just follow my heart. I don't actively go out chasing work. There's a beautiful quote that's out of A Course in Miracles, and it just says, where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say, and to whom? I just want to show up and be of service. And that's what I do in my business. I create programs for young people. I take them through goal setting, vision boards, journaling. I've created 2 Dream Big journals. I take them through all the steps that I've done to help me achieve my goals. I work with teachers still. I love working with educators. I'm passionate about education. That educators, it's the most important role out there. Every child has the opportunity to be inspired by a teacher. So I do a lot of work with teachers to always see our kids when they walk through those doors, to never underestimate those important moments, particularly the moment that I had with Kathy. And it scares me to think where I would have ended up if that moment didn't happen. I could honestly say that I probably would have ended up dead or in jail. That's kind of where I was heading. And I also provide Aboriginal cultural capability training now with organisations, government, non-government agencies. And now, from a little girl that was always shy, always shame, I never wanted anyone to look at me, I never wanted to use my voice, I never wanted anyone to ask me any questions. As an educator, it's, I always felt like I was the least capable kid in the class, and often I've said, I always felt like the dumbest kid in the class. So to go on and achieve what I have achieved, and people don't hear about little people like me, and I guess my goal is to inspire lots of different kids to focus on their strengths, their passion, to go on and make a difference. And I now speak at conferences right around the country. I've heard from readers all around the world saying that they're reading my book and it's changing things for them. That's helping them get through grief. It's helping them set goals. It's helping them to be inspired. The teachers and the leaders are reading this book and finding it as like a practical handbook. Just little simple things that they can actually do to really make a difference. Importantly, the book that I'm writing, it was in my teens when I decided to, I guess make a change and decide that I was not going to be just handed the cards that were dealt to me. I decided, and I've always seen myself as just throwing those cards back until I was happy with, the cards that I have. And in December this year, my son and I will publish our book, which is a motivational book for teens, and I'm really excited about that one. Hopefully have to con my daughter up now one day to write a book with me. I've had an amazing career so far. I'm very, very fortunate that I've found my love of writing. I'm inspiring first-time readers, Aboriginal people, and very stubbornly I've decided to stick to my very storytelling way throughout my writing journey. A lot of people read my book and they say it's just like you're sitting down having a cup of tea, sharing yarns, and that's what I hoped for. People from directors, CEOs, teachers, but importantly first-time readers. I've got even Aboriginal communities from my hometown, Walgett, Moree, that are saying they've never read a book in their life, but they've actually read my book because I use a lot of my Aboriginal English in here. I'm very, very much strong, I guess, passionate Aboriginal woman, and a lot of people look at me and they say, well, you don't look Aboriginal. I'm like, well, it comes from within, you know. I have a non-Aboriginal father, but I was raised by 3 incredible, proud Aboriginal women, and I guess our Aboriginality isn't about what we look like. It's from the heart, and it's who we are, and I can't really describe it, but it sits within my chest, and I'm inspired and powered by my ancestors who are with me each and every day, leading the way, helping me to show up and be of service. So I'm going to finish up my yarn today by again thanking you for the opportunity to come and share a few yarns to tell you about my journey of dreaming big, imagining the what if, being that teacher who makes a difference and lead Aboriginal education for all students, for inspiring our young people to create the life of their dreams in their teens, and importantly, just following my heart, showing up and being of service. My website, I'm the only Kylie Captain. I don't know of another one. It's actually my Aboriginal name as well. Trackers up in Warrabinda, couldn't pronounce apparently my great-grandfather's name, and he was a clever old man. They called him Captain. KylieCaptain.com.au. You can reach out. I've got free downloads on my website. My books are for sale on my website. I'm not a very good self-promoter, but apparently in business you have to tell people what you do. So hopefully I've been able to articulate what I do, what my books are about, and I still have I think a few more books in me that I would love to write, and I'm extremely grateful to be here at the State Library of New South Wales to share my journey. And again, thank you, Jane, and everyone for this opportunity today. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Kylie. We look forward to inviting you back again and again as you write the book and the next book and the next book.